we're also one of the leading Wi-Fi suppliers to the automotive industry. And so we work with all the tier ones as well as the end customers in the automotive world. So I'm the vice chair of an 802.11 group that's called the Wireless Next Generation Group, which is all the forward-looking stuff in 802.11. And we have a fairly recently formed group in 802.11, which is the ESRC Coexistence Tigers team, and I chair that group as well. Now, we're not specifically talking about the Wi-Fi Alliance here, but there's a Wi-Fi Alliance automotive group, and I chair that group. It's made up of a large number of companies that are involved in the automotive market, and we are heavily involved in capturing market requirements and use cases in the automobile. Again, all focused on Wi-Fi. There's a lot of other wireless things other than Wi-Fi in the car, but that's the focus of that group. So the things I'm going to talk about today are really 802.11, 802.15 focused. And 802.11, everybody has a Wi-Fi in their laptop. How many people have a Wi-Fi in their laptop? I'm sure it's just about everybody. So 802.11 historically was used for lots of different things. What we're seeing in the automobile now is for these in-vehicle infotainment systems. And really, if you think about it, kind of one of the buzzwords in enterprise is bring your own device. And so what's happening, and I'll talk more about this in detail in a minute, is bringing your own devices into the automobile and having them connect to the car. That's the advantage of using a standards-based approach with multi-vendor interoperability, that you can have all kinds of different devices brought into the car and interact with the IVI, the vehicle infotainment system. There are some use cases that I'll talk about that we've identified that are really going to help drive the 802.11 technology into the car. And then there's one particular part of 802.11, one particular flavor of 802.11 called 802.11p, that is the basis of the DSRC, the Dedicated Short Range Communications System that Paul alluded to earlier. It's part of the 802.11 family, and that's why we have the ability to have a good coexistence story between 802.11p, which is primarily used for B2B, and also used for vehicle infrastructure. And then I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing in this coexistence type in 802.11. And then I'll talk a little bit also about 802.15, and you probably, if you're familiar with 15, it's mostly associated with technology called safety. So there's some interesting things going on in 802.15 that are related to the connected vehicle as well. So first I'll talk about 802.11. 802.11 has been around for 20 plus years now. It is really wireless Ethernet. So all the stuff that you heard the previous speakers talk about in Ethernet, we are all part of the same basic architecture for Ethernet. We share a common upper layer architecture with Ethernet. So 802.3, that whole 802 wired Ethernet family, 802.3, we all come together at 802.1 layers, where we can do bridging, we can do, basically have a common architecture. So in the automobile, we would have both wired and wireless Ethernet that all comes together in different portions of the car. 802.11 has been extraordinarily successful. And just this year alone, this industry will ship almost 2 billion 802.11 chipsets, Wi-Fi chipsets. And that's projected to go to almost 4 billion chipsets per year by 2018. So phenomenal success. We just recently passed having more 802.11 nodes than there are people on the planet this year. So 802.11 develops the physical and medium access control layers for wireless LAN. There's some other enhancements that kind of complement the MAC layer. But fundamentally what 802.11 does is the radio and the modem and the lower parts of the link layer, the MAC, medium access control. And then there's interoperability testing and branding. That's done by a different group called the Wi-Fi Alliance. It's an industry trade group. It's not really connected to IEEE. There are a lot of us that attend both groups. So I have the pleasure of attending all the Wi-Fi Alliance meetings as well as all the 802.11 meetings. And the Wi-Fi Alliance owns this Wi-Fi brand, that name symbol that you probably see on products. That's the organization that owns that brand. because they do the interoperability that's the certification. So that's 802.11 sort of in a nutshell. We grew out of the original Ethernet activities in IEEE 802 and have been around for, like I said, 20 plus years now. And we've gone through a number of generations that I'll step through in a minute. But to kind of come back to what Paul mentioned earlier, to try to put things in perspective to these big numbers. So there are more than 5 million 802.11 chipsets a day being shipped right now. Big numbers. And since I'm in the chip business, it's a rather humbling. The chip business is always a race to the bottom, right? We're always trying. There's so much. What we call the standards effort is co-opetition. We cooperate and compete, which means that you get into the market and all this competition drives costs down. It's great for the consumer, but it's brutal for the chip business because we're always really fighting with our competitors as well as trying to innovate and try new things. So, in terms of the history of wireless local area networks, we started out with wireless LAN being a way to connect mostly mobile computing platforms, laptops, to infrastructure networks. So we had laptops and we had access points. That was really the way we started with wireless local area networks. And that, when in the late 90s, when wireless LAN became common in laptops, Intel and others pushed it into the laptop. So market penetration now for laptops is essentially 100%. It's hard to buy a laptop anymore without wireless LAN. And then there became another way of connectivity in smartphones. So now a very, very large percentage of smartphones are being sold with wireless LAN. And the feature phones, the mid-range phones don't all have it, but essentially all smartphones now have wireless LAN. And that's driven volumes to fairly huge numbers as well. So after that, now we're starting to see more diversification in consumer electronics equipment. So we have a lot of smart TVs, we have smart Blu-ray players, we have game decks and other CE equipment now that is wireless LAN equipped. And then, of course, we're seeing now the connectivity in the cars. That a lot of cars are now being shipped with Wi-Fi. The market's relatively small, but we expect it to grow fairly dramatically. And then beyond the fourth screen, so this is considered the first screen, the second screen, the third screen, and now the automobile is considered the fourth screen. And this is the cockpit of Tesla. It has a 17-inch touchscreen. If you haven't seen it, it's pretty spectacular to see such a large screen inside the car. Beyond the fourth screen, of course, is no screen at all. It's the Internet of Things, where we start embedding wireless LAN into all kinds of sensors and other objects around the vehicle, around your home, and other places. So we've gone from 1, 2, 3, and 4 screens now to no screen at all. And so if you look, that's really been the evolution. Laptop to smartphone to TV to automobiles. And automobiles are the fourth screen in the evolution of wireless LAN. And a lot is being driven by this idea of bring your own device. I want to be able to bring my smartphone into the car, and I want to be able to have that smartphone either be a tether to connect to the internet. So this is the head unit in the car, the smartphone then can tether to the internet, or there can be an internet modem inside the car itself. Either way, that head unit gets internet connectivity and then can provide internet to other devices in the car. So this is, like I said, this is either the in-car modem or tethering that can provide internet connectivity. And there are a lot of very fascinating use cases. One of the ones I like a lot is what I call this the media filling station. So you pull up to a station, a gas station, to fill up your car with gas, and while you're there, you can download media content, movies, music, other kinds of things, into the car simultaneously while you're getting your tank filled with gas, or you're doing a fast charge on the Tesla network for your electric car, or whatever electric charging station you're using. So you can download, you can fill up your car with media while you're filling up the car with either electrons or gasoline. The other big use case that we see described a lot for bring your own device into the car is what's called mirror display mirroring. So if I bring my smartphone, I have my favorite mapping app on my phone, and rather than using the in-car nav system, let's say the user wants to use their own mapping app, then you can, using wireless local area network technology in a peer-to-peer kind of fashion, connect the screen on your smart device, your tablet or phone, to the display in the car. And that's called display mirroring. So this is another big use case. Now, sort of related to that use case is that you could also stream AV content from the head unit to other screens in the car. So let's say the kids in the back seat want to watch a movie that's stored on the head unit that I downloaded from my virtual Redbox while I was getting gas, and they want to watch that movie on their screens in the back. Obviously, you don't want the driver watching the movie while you're driving. So the kids could stream that movie then to their portable devices in the back seat using wireless LAN from that head unit that contains the big storage, advanced storage for different kinds of movies and music. A lot of fascinating use cases, a lot of use cases that we think are going to be pretty big, and that's why we believe that wireless LAN will see fairly large market penetrations, probably 70 to 80% or more within 5 years in cars. Certainly it's starting already in the top end. Some of the premium cars already have Wi-Fi in them. Some Audi cars and some other cars have Wi-Fi already in them today. But we see that being pushed down into even mid-range and lower-end cars over time. And those are just infotainment applications. So a little bit more about IEEE, the 802.11, the technology itself. One of the things that we've always tried to stress in 802.11 is different physical layers that have different frequency bands and different speed capabilities with a common MAC. Now, we've done a lot of things to the MAC over the years. These are the different amendments. So this is 802.11a. You've heard the alphabet soup already. So we have, as Paul mentioned, we have AC now that is essentially ratified. That is the latest generation high-speed gigabit wireless system. AF is the TD white spaces. Those two are virtually done. We have some other physical layers that are nearly complete, or getting fairly along in the process, standardization process. AH, which is unlicensed sub-1 gigahertz, and AJ, which is the Chinese version of the 60 gig standard, which is 802.11at, which is already ratified. And then you have all these MAC features. But fundamentally, the architecture is we have multiple physical layers with a common medium access layer. That's the philosophy behind 802.11. And above that medium access layer, we have all the other things that are part of the Ethernet ecosystem. Now, I mentioned there's one other thing here, and that is 802.11p that I've talked about was a physical layer designed specifically for the dedicated short-range communications for automotive applications. And John Kinney, who follows me, is going to talk more about DSRC. But the point I want to stress here is that 802.11p, the physical layer for DSRC, is actually part of the 802.11 family and has all the same kinds of signaling that 802.11 has. Here's sort of the time evolution of the technology. As Paul mentioned, we're typically lagging the wired guys by about 10 years, it seems. So we started out at a megabit in the early versions of the 802.11 direct sequence. We went to 11B at up to 11 megabits per second, and then G to 54, N to 300 or 600, depending on how you implemented it. And now we're getting into the multi-gigabit range with these latest amendments. And the next generation beyond that is what's called high-efficiency wireless, which is really meant to improve robustness and performance, probably more than being a speed kicker, make the technology more. We've been so successful, we're congested in a lot of places, and we want to make the system more reliable. So I want to spend the rest of my time talking about two things. One is the DSRC coexistence issues, and then move on to 802.15. I won't spend much time here talking about DSRC, but to say that in 802.11 we developed the SPI and MAC layer that are part of 802.11p, and then John will talk more about all these other layers. This is not your typical wireless LAN stack that's above the MAC, and that's why it has a different ecosystem associated with it. But at the lower layers, we're common. We're very similar, that have OFDM5s that have common preambles and things like that. And John will talk more about all the different architecture architectural elements of DSRC. So as I mentioned at the outset, the FCC set up a notice of proposed rulemaking earlier this year that would allow sharing the 5.9 gigahertz band, which is currently allocated for DSRC, and would allow Wi-Fi systems, traditional 802.11 commercial networking, consumer networking systems, to share that band. Well, that's not how it was designed. The DSRC systems are primary users of that band. 802.11 traditionally operates in an unlicensed band. And so we have to figure out, is there a way that we can develop wireless LAN 802.11 kind of Wi-Fi systems to coexist with these 11P systems that we already have defined that are the basis of DSRC. And I'm not going to walk through this in great detail. I would say the automotive industry is concerned about this, right? DSRC was designed for vehicle-to-vehicle communications and safety of life and collision avoidance and things like that. And whenever you start proposing to share a band for that kind of critical application, you need to proceed fairly carefully to make sure that you aren't going to cause a lot of unintended problems. So this is kind of where we are with this group, where we're trying to resolve the needs of the automotive industry while trying to address the bandwidth requirements of Wi-Fi, which are pretty substantial. 802.11ac, the latest amendment, uses channels up to 160 megahertz wide. And you can see there's very few of those available today. Right now, there are really only 2 of them available. And even this one's not available outdoors. An automobile is considered an outdoor application. So, and these other bands in the middle here have radar detection requirements and other things. That's why many companies in the wireless LAN industry would like to be able to use that upper end up there where DSRC is. And that's what we're trying to resolve in this coexistence Tiger team. And as has been mentioned several times, it's an open group. Anybody can participate. Any of you could call into our calls. The information is freely available on the 802.11 website for you to participate in our Friday calls in this group. So this is the proposal, sharing DSRC and wireless LAN in this upper end of the band. So this is kind of where we are with what the group's objectives are and the things that we're working on. And we're going to try to be engaged with the regulatory process. So we'll be providing a snapshot to the FCC later this month of where we are as a group and where we expect to go over the next year. But we're trying to engage both proactively with the automotive industry and the traditional consumer Wi-Fi interests to see if we can come to an agreement on how we would share this band in a way that doesn't impact the services that DSRC offers. Okay, in the time I have left, 802.15 is, as Paul mentions, wireless person-area networks. It works with multiple MACs. You're probably mostly familiar with it as Zigbee, which is used for a lot of smart energy and metering applications. There's some other parts of 802.15 that you may be familiar with that are not yet necessarily automotive applications yet. But Bluetooth is part of 802.15. This is a chart that kind of replays something that Karen mentioned earlier, this idea of wireless sensor networks in the home that would be Zigbee-based, so there may be a tie-in to automobiles there. And so there's a lot of work going on from utility companies and the Zigbee world to see if there are ways to use hybrid vehicles and electric vehicles more effectively as part of a smart utility application. And the Zigbee folks are working fairly closely with them on that. And there's also some SAE. Anyway, I think my time is about up, so